Alright guys, it's another day, still the same stuff. I'm trying to have just a day off wiring. I might do some more wiring tonight, but I'm just trying not to go insane. Trying not to sit down and do wiring for a whole week. I don't know how people that like just do wiring for a living, people like old Whitey's there at Whitey's Wiring, who honestly pretty much taught me everything I friggin' know about wiring and is the standard that I try and do my work to. I don't know how people like that just do it day in, day out all the time, because like I've been doing it for the past 4 days straight, and just my head's in shambles, mind-boggling. So anyway, today, just getting started on getting a lot of this plumbing happening, getting some sensors in and everything. As you can see, I've just finished this breather line for the oil tank. For that breather, we've got our fuel pressure sensor in here now. As you can see over here, the other guard's been dummied back up, and the boys have started doing all the AC lines and that. Had one more little setback today, which again, now that we've got this extra time, isn't a huge deal, but would have been a pain. But anyway, AC lines happening. But yeah, the setback was that we thought that these were 1/8 MPT ports on this receiver dryer, and the idea was just to put a pressure sensor in there straight directly into the receiver dryer. But they're not 1/8 MPT, so they're not going to work. And from what we can find, there's no sort of adapter fittings in AC fittings with like a 1/8 MPT on the run or on the trail, whatever the hell the fitting term is for that. There's no AC adapters where you can put a 1/8 MPT port in it. So what we've sort of had a look is these charge ports. This one that's on the liquid line or that line. It seems like they're the right size that you could take the Schrader valve out of them, drill them out, and tap them to 1/8. So the plan is to put we're going to get another number 6 right angle with an R134A charge port and drill it out and tap it to 1/8 and replace this fitting here. Or actually this one here, I think is the decider.
Yeah, that'll be easier.
Yeah, and put our pressure sensor in that. So that's the idea. You can see our interchiller. We've got temp sensors on the in and out, so we know exactly how well this is working, as well as we'll have one coming out of the brick, so that we know exactly how well all that's working, what the heat transfer and everything's doing. Going into the brick. Sorry.
Because this one here comes from the blower, that will tell us the out.
Yep. So yeah, we'll know essentially what temperature of this is, what the temperature of that is, what the temperature of that is, and we'll know how well the system's all working. And then obviously our IAT sensor in the manifold too, to tell us what the air temp is in there. I have wired in a spare in the front here for if we wanted to put, because we had thought about putting a pre-throttle body IAT sensor in, so you could see the difference between pre and post blower for the air temp. But we sort of had decided that for all the messing around that was going to be, I ended up wiring an extra spare wire into the front of the loom that's for the front of the car, and if we want to, we can just put an air temp somewhere in the engine bay here just to measure ambient temp, and that's going to give us a fairly good idea of what's going in to the filter, and that is essentially just as good as having a pre-throttle body IAT. So we'll know what the ambient is versus what's in the manifold after the cooler brick, and that'll give us a good enough idea of how well or how efficient it's working. But that being said, we don't even know if that's really necessary, so we're not that worried about it at the moment, but the option is there in the loom to do that in future. Not only that, but we've also got the auxiliary injectors in the loom as well. In my engine loom, I actually have a plug for auxiliary injectors because we're a little bit worried that our set of 1650s isn't going to get us exactly where we want it to be as far as our final power and basically what this thing is going to be capable of. So I did wire in the loom. There's provisions in the loom for 3 auxiliary injectors, which is more than we need anyway. So if we need to, we can put some injectors in the intake pipe or in the blower manifold, just some extra injectors. They don't have to be great injectors, they just have to obviously do what they need to do, because through the R5 and through Haltech, they'd be staged and they would only be active at full throttle, like wide open throttle, just to get us that extra couple of 100 horsepower sort of thing. You know, as far as just driving, street driving, getting around, the 1650s will still do all of that. It's only going to be at wide open throttle where we just need that extra little bit of fuel that they're going to be active. So, but anyway, that's a later problem. We just thought we'd put it in the loom for future, just in case we do find that our injectors limit us. Obviously, we have a pretty good idea of where 1650 injectors are going to get us. However, we have to account for the fact that we are driving external oil pump. We don't know how much this blower is going to tax. You know, that's all things you have to work into your fuel equations for how much fuel you're going to need, because you've got to use that energy to drive this big freaking blower. So, but anyway, it's going to do for now. Get the car sorted. That's a later problem potentially, but yeah, just we've got our oil temp sensor in here, so this is into the filter straight out of the pump, so that's where our oil temp's going to be taken from. We talked about putting it in the feed from the tank to the pressure stage of the pump, so that would give us pretty much a direct reading of what the oil in the reservoir, what the temperature is. However, our worry is that having the temp probe in the fitting does create a bit of a restriction. So if it's on the suction side to the pump, we are worried about cavitation if it is too much of a restriction, where in the pressure side, you know, that you don't have that worry. So that's the idea with that. That's why it's up here. It's not the prettiest. Obviously, if we had put it in the feed line, it'd be hidden, it'd be out of the way, but at the end of the day, there's going to be so much going on here. The whole deal was that the owner, he pretty much said he doesn't want to have to lift the bonnet. So as much as obviously we would like to make it pretty as possible, at the end of the day, there's so much going on. There's shit everywhere. We're not that worried about little things like that because I don't think they're really going to draw your attention. Once this bonnet's popped and you got that big blower right in your face and you got all this plumbing and oil lines and everything everywhere, I don't think you're really going to notice little things like sensors. So I think having it in the better position for function is more important than trying to make it as pretty as possible. And that's pretty much been our whole deal with the build. We were hoping that this new hub was going to be here today. It's already past when the carrier that normally we think it's on would normally come. So I'm not sure if it's going to be here today. It may be tomorrow now, which is a bit of a pain, but like I said, at least we got this extra time. Still got plenty to go on with, plenty of plumbing, and yeah, I'll get back to wiring soon enough. Got a bus bar, which is what I wanted for the back here. So bus bar for our distribution, plus our mega fuses. So there's going to be one for the R5, one for the PD16, and one for the start. And then obviously there's going to be some 16mm square cable coming out from the distribution as well. And I've got some MIDI fuses, and that's going to be one for our power steering pump, one for our intercooler pump at the front, which will also, that power wire will also be for the AC system as well. So Bo made this plate the other day, which sits up here next to the PD16 on the rail that I made to house the PD16. And this plate, this alu block, it's going to have our distribution block plus our fuses and stuff, so that's all going to be up in here. And then obviously from our battery, from our terminals, we'll have two 50mm square cables to feed the distribution, and then from there out to our fuses and out from there. So that should be plenty in theory. Probably still way overkill. I'd still believe like the 50mm square earth for the R5 is way overkill, because pretty much all of the amperage, everything that's going out is most of it's getting earth back to the chassis or something. Not a lot of it's coming back to the to the R5. So that's just insane. But what I figured was, if I've got to buy the cable anyway, I may as well use what Haltech recommends. That way, you know, nothing can be just sort of blamed. If something happens, it's not on us for using too small a cable. But yeah, for those watching at home that know a lot about wiring, I'm never a person that, I wouldn't lie and say that I know heaps and heaps and heaps about wiring, but I do understand that this is way overkill, but it's what we're using. So yeah, start setting all that up soon enough. But so that's for the R5, that runs in the car. Similar to this side, but on this side is going to be our 16mm, my can to communicate the PD16 and the R5, as well as some light wires from where the PD16 is controlling the lights. Will also control the indicators and parkers for the front too, so they run up there as well. So yeah, bit going on, still heaps of wiring to go, guys, but yeah, like I said, after 4 days straight of just sitting around wiring, I just wanted to have a bit of a break from it today and focus on doing something else. Yeah, shame that this hub still hasn't shown up, because we really want to get this engine together. But so there is a handful of sensors and extra things we're going to need as well, which I have to get ordered. Again, I mean, Raceworks is great a lot of the time, but we've got another sensor here that didn't come with any pins. So yeah, between a lot of the Deutsch connectors and a lot of these that just don't have pins, and the firewall connectors, which we're missing heaps of pins as well, I'm going to need to get a heap of Deutsch pins together, because we're definitely going to be short. So we've got the AC lines over here, but there's also going to be heater lines that are going to run there as well, that have to come from, there'll be one eventually in the radiator top tank, because we're getting the radiator redone with some different provisions. So there'll be that, and then yeah, there'll be a fair bit going on from the feed from the water pump, and then from the top tank there'll be heater lines. Yeah, it's going to be busy. Still got to get wiring in too.
That's the oil tank.
Yeah, right.
So all the oil gets to the top, and then show car, this hot rod, it was built like that, like completely shaved.
But that's from someone who's obviously not very good at it.
Yeah, I seen that. How'd that go?
Yeah, it was good except for the. Just making sure.
Alright guys, back here this morning. Rex worked late-ish last night, not super late, but while it's up on the hoist, I figure I'll show you around from underneath what's going on. As you can see, a lot of our oil lines starting to happen. That was welded in so that we could have something to brace or to pin the oil lines to. So that's out of the filter into the cooler. That's obviously from our reservoir to our pressure stage of the pump. Bit going on down here. While it's up, I thought I'd show you. I haven't showed you these since they were terminated. So these are our power steering lines. Oh, sorry, these are, yeah, power steering lines. So they go up across there. As you can see, so our power steering rack, and just fits the sump with our new fitting block. Obviously, very much appreciatedly created by Velocity Engineering, especially for us for that sump, because it is an outdated version of his sump. He doesn't make that version of that sump anymore. So for him to actually go back and CNC a new fitting block for us was a huge solid, and we're very much appreciative of that. So as well as that, we've got gearbox lines. So these are cooler lines for the gearbox. They run up on the firewall there around to this side of the chassis. Excuse my wiring, which is hanging down for now. And they are actually pinned on the outside of the chassis rail, and they go out to the power steering cooler out there. So that's those ones. And these are our power steering lines, which I think I showed you at a very early video. And then our fuel lines up this side, which are terminated now up on the firewall. So we've got fuel lines terminated up there, up to our reg, and that's all happy days. So it's while it's up in the air, I'm just looking around trying to figure out where I'm going to run this power cable. I do at this stage regret buying red. I should have just bought all black and then used red heat shrink in retrospect, but red's what we've got, so that's what we're using. It's just that now that I know that I'm going to have to run one externally, now knowing that I'm going to have a dog's dick red fucking cable running from back to front underneath the car is a bit of a piss off. Should have just done it in black, but I don't believe there's enough black left to do it after running the R5 Earth. So, hey, it is what it is. It's going to be dog stick red. But anyway, there's just not really any nice way to do it, really. At this stage, I'm thinking penetrate up here with our power steering penetrations, with our power steering bulkheads, put a gland in there and penetrate up there and run the cable pretty much along with our power steering lines up to the front where it's got to go to the starter. So that makes the most sense to me. Either way, it's going to be ugly. I could run it with the fuel lines, but it doesn't really make a lot of difference. And then I've got to somehow get it from this side over to this side to the starter. So it makes more sense to do it on that side. And this is the brake line that was done elsewhere. Really nice brake line. They've done a really good job to try and run it parallel with our power steering lines and make it look nice. And now I'm just going to have this gross dog stick red freaking power cable running up with it also. Sick. Anyway, it is what it is. So yeah, I'll run that externally, and then pretty much everything else from the PD16 and our 16mm square cable that has to run to the firewall, which will go on a post, will all run internally. So that's how that's all going to go. Hopefully that's pretty much what I'll get sorted today, and I'll start getting all of the penetrations I need for my wiring on the firewall. So that now that I actually know the heater lines are still going to be made, so don't worry. I was going to say the guide can go back on properly, but not without heater lines, which are still a ways away. Anyway, I did receive a text message from Star Trek saying that our package will be here today, which will be that hub for the engine. So yeah, do a little bit more wiring this morning, but hopefully just before lunch, we've got that hub for this engine, and we can start getting this engine finally together. Boy, it's been a long road. All right, guys, we finally got what we need. So this is our hub from Joe Blow to suit his crank support, and the balancer shell obviously comes off the ATI hub, which has the HDV drive for the oil pump, which we're not using, which is what is the problem and was clashing with the rest. And Bob's Yarny, everything bolts to the new hub from Joe. All of our stuff goes on, and it's all a yee smacking ha. So anyway, so far so good. Obviously, we still got to make sure that, you know, everything fits properly. Hopefully that diameter doesn't clash with that diameter and everything else. Something like that. That's probably why it supplies that, I guess. So that's how that goes. But yeah, obviously we'll start putting all this together, make sure it all works. But yeah, if all goes well, we can finally get this on. Obviously, get our top dead center right, get our timing pointer, get this assembled, get some sick photos. How's your Friday? So like everything, nothing straightforward, which should surprise none of you by this point, because literally every single thing we try and do on this car ends up being a big deal. Anyway, problem is, this is part of the Whipple blower drive, and it obviously fits the ATI balancer and then converts it to the 6-bolt drive that you need for your blower drive, which is yay, yeehaw. That's all good. We know that that works with that from previously having it set up, and we know that our mandrel also works, right? Because we've had it all bolted together before. That's a party, but Joe's hubs are more so, obviously, Joe blow, these crank supports. All of this is usually normally based around a root style blower, not a Whipple setup. So this spacer that comes with the Whipple drive does not fit Joe's hub, which means that this has to be machined and modified to suit. So currently our solution is to have this, get this on a lathe and just machine the center out to that diameter so that it will fit over the top and bolt back to the balancer as it should, and then we can put our blower drive back on top and then hopefully still be in business there, plus our mandrel. So that's pretty much where we're at with it. So we needed to try and get this on a lathe ASAP and make it happen. Yeehaw, how fun. Alright, so the next issue we're facing with the setup is balancer bolt washer. No fitteroonie. So obviously with the ATI one, designed to fit a regular LS balancer bolt. This is ARP balancer bolt washer. Boom, that's fine, but Joe's one does not. So I can Joe a quick call and just ask what is meant to be used, or what's designed to be used for this thing. But yes, we'll, apart from that, it's just try and get this in a lathe somehow if you can hold it internally and try and turn that down as well. Might be a bit difficult, but we'll see, we'll find out. But I'll ask Joe what it's meant to suit anyway. Alright, all pump housing no longer needed. So just checking basically everything else at the moment before we go get on a lathe. So yeah, we'll check the hub on the bearing, make sure that's the right size. We'll check it on the crank, make sure everything's gonna line up and do what it needs to do. And this is the solution, wherever it went, here, that the boys come up with to be able to turn down the balancer washer. So I called Joe, I asked him, and that is the solution. You just turn it down and make it work. So yeah, that's that. So next issue, obviously the way the ATI balances, the holes are spaced. They can only bolt one way. They're not even, like a clutch pressure plate on a flywheel. Like there's only one way that they can go. And the way that the hub is keyed for the balancer, top dead center, is not even anywhere close to the timing marks. So we're gonna have to pretty much set the timing pointer, write down, make a note, write down what is actually top dead center as far as the angle on the balancer.
Yep.
And that information is going to have to be very importantly not lost through time, because so it's going to have to be on a card, laminated, etched into the freaking glove box lid. I don't know. We're going to have to do something so that that information doesn't get lost anywhere, because it's going to be very, very important for the life of the engine and car. But anyway, it is what it is. The hub's keyed where it's keyed, and there's not much else we can do about that. The balancer only goes in the hub one way, and the hub's keyed where it's keyed, and the key's got to go where the key is. So it just is what it is. Obviously, these hubs and stuff, like I said, Joe blow, a lot of this stuff's based around roots blowers, and for a lot of the setups that would be using said hub and crank support and everything else, a lot of them wouldn't even use balancers. A lot of them are just police, like different setups. What we're trying to do here is very unique, and that's what I've been trying to tell everyone, including the client, since the beginning, was that this is all a very unique combination of things, a very unique setup, and there's nothing off the shelf that's going to make it all work, and that's why we've had to do so much of what we've had to do to modify everything and get it all happening. So again, if we'd stuck to the original 408 cube and stuck to wet sump, and we're just running the external crank support and everything else the way the original plan was, this would have been finished 6 months ago. But you know, obviously with everything that's gone on, the knock-on effect of having to go this engine dry sump and then etc. You've seen how it's all panned out, and it's a lot of work. takes a lot of brain power. And it's not things that you can just foresee as well. You can't put the cart before the horse. There's a certain order it all has to happen in, and in this certain order, these issues rear their ugly head. And it's just, yeah, that's that. All right, next problem is our hub is too tight on the bearing. This is in the instructions that come with the crank support from Joe Blow. Whatever goes in the hub, the bearing, whether it's the hub or whether it's the sleeve that goes on another balancer if you're running AC, it's meant to be able to float through there freely. It's not meant to bind or touch, because what that does is expands the inside of the bearing, and then the bearing doesn't work properly. So that's how it should be, essentially. And at the moment, this hub is too tight, so we'll probably have to turn down a thou or two off that.
Yeah, very, very carefully.
Yeah, so we'll take crank support, hub, fucking spacer, the bolt washer, we'll take it all over. Yeah.
Load the engine up.
Hey, Bo, just chuck that on your shoulder. But yeah.
Chuck the whole engine on the lathe.
Just chuck it in the U.
So yeah, it's gonna be a bit of pissing around and getting this where it should be.
Chuck her in the U, eh?
Yeah. Anyway, lucky we've got that little bit extra time, which, as I told the client, and just gonna get swallowed up with this sort of thing anyway, because this is what building custom cars is. It just is. As much as people like to think it's just big Lego and you just buy the stuff and chuck it all together, when you're building fully bespoke one-off things and trying to make all this shit work, this is what it actually is. This is the reality.
Yeah, it's not all strippers and coke.
No. Righto guys, so Rex is next door sorting out our whole crank hub situation on the lathe. We're very lucky to have an next door neighbour that used to own foundry. He's got a lathe and he's pretty handy, so that's a very handy little thing to have next door. So while he's doing that, me and Bo have been continuing on with more stuff. So wiring our can, parkers and indicators, intercooler pump main power, and start trigger and something, trans brake. From the spare 25 amp HGOs we had on the PD16. So they're all wired in, and what we've ended up doing is our starter wire, we figured. So we wired these. Rex had to notch the little panel behind the seat out to run the main power cables for the R5. And rather than run them across and up and notching this side and having cables on this side as well, we found it was easy enough just to run them across there, shoot them along behind the back seat and then up this sill. But what we found is, after running the other wires, that we would be able to actually fit the old wire, the other three that we made on the car side of the sill, and the power for the starter, we are actually able to fit that in the sill on this side too. And what we're going to do there, I've left plenty up the front for what ends up happening. But yeah, so that's able to run all the way up, and we are starting to run out of room on here for our penetrations. By the time I have all of my loom penetrations and trying to get all the wiring through there, what I'm thinking about doing is, when this engine comes out and we can finally put our main engine or actual engine in, once we get this crank stuff sorted, I'm thinking about potentially putting a penetration for the starter wire sort of up around here somewhere, not on the firewall, but sort of more on the trans tunnel around the gearbox area, so that we can hopefully go straight through the floor there and shoot it straight to the starter. That way it can run inside, across, and then punch out there. And what that will do is it'll just mean that we don't have to get it out this side and then try and get it around the pipes and everything to the starter. We can hopefully keep it away from heat just by having it on the inside already and shooting it straight to the starter motor, and just saves another penetration up here where we're really actually starting to run out of room. So stoked that that ended up happening inside the car. We don't have to run it externally. We don't have to have that big dog's dick red cable external looking gross with our really nice power steering lines or fuel lines. So yeah, happy that we've been able to sort that out. So that's the plan at the moment, that's what we're doing. So we're just sort of finalising getting them in the sill. But that's pretty much all the cables now run back to front that needed to be run. And yeah, time to start sorting a few more things out and inching closer and closer to being sorted. Alright, our nice brand new pedal and pedal bracket all mounted up. Yeehaw. So, get this in and see what we're working with. Pedals in. So the plan is to put one of these insulated posts, that one, probably somewhere up here, and run our 16mm squared to that. Power distribution from there will be for the interior light, and then we'll run power for the actual AC unit from there too. And then the 50mm squared for the starter, run up
across and probably penetrate somewhere around the old high beam button and try and run it straight through and to the starter motor from there. And then obviously need to wire all this stuff into the R5 as well. Handbrake switch, there'll be a brake switch, our accelerator pedal obviously, ignition, all has to be wired into the R5 under here. But yeah, it's all happening. It's all happening.
All right, and Rex is back.
Like I bought one, except if you bought one that fits.
So yeah, look at that.
So we got just a tiny little gap in there. But
Yep.
yeah, that's her basically dummied up and bolted together how it's going to go. So
Awesome.
crisis averted.
Crises averted.
So big
How much-
shout out to our
neighbour?
neighbour.
How much did you take off that?
As much as it had
Just
to.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Had to take a couple of little swipes at it.
Yep.
When I was over there, I was a bit concerned that it had a little bit of sideways movement, and I was like, oh, maybe we've gone too far. But just checking the sleeve in there, and it's got the same, if not more. So
Yep.
it's all good. It's just like a bit of sideways movement, but there's no up or down, side to side. So that's what we want. So,
Yep.
so yeah, now we're good to go. We can put this
Let's go. Let's get it together.
piece of poo together.
Yeah.
Rightio, so we were just having a look, and where Bo has made that cover plate to go over the old hole where the clutch cable or linkage setup, whatever was in this, went through, that we could definitely put a gland in that and run our start cable through there. That'd be perfect. So we'll get the pipes in anyway and sort of see how they're looking, but that would be a perfect spot to run it through with the gland, and that would be happy days. So that's a good idea. And I noticed while I was under there mounting that pedal, there is a grommet directly under the brake booster for something. I don't know what it was for, but there's nothing in it at the moment. So it'd probably be perfect place where I can utilize an already existing hole, and I'll probably put the wiring for the firewall, which is like the wiper motor and the oil pressure, fuel pressure sensor and everything. I can probably run that through that existing grommet. Because yeah, at this stage our biggest concern is we're just running out of room. Because of the drain that goes from the cowl out to here, which I'll show you once the guard comes back off. There's a drain to drain all the water that goes in through the cowl. We don't really want to put any penetrations underneath that drain, because then you run the risk of obviously water draining onto whatever's penetrated and then leaking inside, or just generally getting whatever there is wet, which is not what you want. So when you're looking at trying to get everything above that drain, we are starting to run pretty short of room. So just trying to work out where we can run things and utilize as much existing stuff as we can and make it work. So we've got the grommet on the loom. That's how it's going to work, and that's going to go in the hole under the booster. So that's one penetration sorted. Three more to go. Yeah, 3 more, including the 16mm square power we've got to get back through the firewall somewhere. All right, it is time to finally put this together.
Together.
Goodness.
Put it together.
What a bloody time.
Yeah, what a saga.
So unfortunately, what our plan was originally, because obviously this is only single keyed, and our machine shop, as much as they can double key the crank, as much as you like, they have nothing to do internal cuts. So they couldn't double key it. And our plan was to just run the one keyway and then pin the other side with a pin kit, which is what you'd normally do if you were supercharging a like an interference fit engine, like a regular LS. You'd normally pin it. Harrop make kits, that's what we use. You drill it, put a pin in, pins the crank, good to go. So that was the plan, was to run one keyway and a pin, which is why the crank hasn't already been machined for a double keyway. However, new hub is machined for a double keyway, which obviously if we'd known this from the very beginning, we would have got the crank machined to suit the double key. However, obviously when the crank got machined and everything, we were still under the impression we were going to be running the external crank support, so that was all completely different. But the unfortunate thing is, because of the new hub, we can't fit the mandrel in for the pin kit. There's no way that we can run the pin, essentially. So we are now relying on the single key, just the one key. Hopefully it's enough. Fingers crossed, because there's not really much else we can do about it at this point, without, short of taking the engine back apart and getting the crank back to the machine shop and getting them to machine the crank for another keyway. There's not much else we can do. So hopefully it'll be alright. I mean, compared to a lot of people that are driving, using these sorts of hubs and driving 1471, blowers, they're putting a lot more stress on the crank and the drive than we are realistically with our very efficient Harrop 4.5 litre blower that we Whipple, sorry, my bad. That we hopefully shouldn't have to, really turn that hard. So, yeah, fingers crossed, it's all good because, not much else is going to happen about it now.
Some of that's in the bearing itself, but like
it
up
floats
and down. So that's like
Yeah.
a little bit, but
does its job.
the sleeve's the same. Like
Yeah, although I think the idea is that it does
Expands
expands a little bit when it goes on to the balancer.
yeah. Anyway, by the time you have some thermal expansion,
Yeah,
when
should
the
be all-
engine's hot, should be all good.
And we don't have to run the stupid empty oil pump casing.
Yeah, just needs to have just that drive gear for the hub to pull up
pull it
against,
up.
and that's it.
Yep, happy days.
Easy.
Which is good because the whole situation with the oil pump was a bit worrying to me because we're running the Torrington thrust bearing as well, and the idea, like with all that pulling up, we've really been pulling the crank into the Torrington as well, and I don't know, I wasn't super stoked with how that setup was looking, but I'm much more comfortable with how this all is. I mean, I'd be a lot more comfortable if we could have double keyed the crank, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get it. All right, so what we're doing at the moment, where Rex lays down the hub, the tool that we use to do it, well, obviously it leaves it more coarse than you'd want on a seal, so we're just gonna try and polish up just where the seal runs, just to get it a bit nicer for the seal surface so that it doesn't potentially damage the seal over time, because obviously you've got the bearing shell in there, but then you've got a seal as well. Alrighty, Bo's sorting out the main power panel. So this is where, obviously, we will have our bus bar and then all of our, what do you call them, mega fuses and everything else. So, yeah, both sorting all that out, getting that ready. And then I can start wiring everything up, all the main power. Rex is polishing this up. That's looking really much nice.
It's about the best I can do without taking too much material. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Yep. So we've got this guard back off, so we'll start looking at sort of where we can penetrate to get our last couple of bits of wire through, really. Yeah, that crank hub is pretty well polished as we can gonna get it and how it's gonna be. Hopefully it's all sweet. I guess time will tell. So that means Rex can finally start getting the front end of this together. It's getting late now. Unfortunately, I can't stay late tonight because the missus is away and I've got to be a dad. We've got to do dad things. So yeah, Rex, I guess will smack on, get this thing together. Spewing that I'm not going to be here to film a lot of it, but yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. As you can see, other head, 6 bolt, all the rest of it, big dog. Yeehaw. Anyway, I'm keen as to get this thing, see this thing all together with the accessories and the oil pump and the blower and everything. It's gonna look crazy. Anyway, I'll see what happens. I might be able to come back later tonight, but yeah, it might just be check in when it's together after Rex has done what he's doing.
Pretty good. That's floating.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no movement up and down, so
Yeah.
waiting for everyone to tell me I'm using a torque wrench wrong because it's got a fucking extension bar on.
Oh, you dumbass.
What an idiot!